I'm Steve Johnson, News Director of theDove TV. Watch more videos from the Dove Newsroom at theDove.us.
Well, welcome back. We're going to try to squeeze in here as much as we can in the short amount of time. Delighted to have with us, and honored to have Ryan Anderson with us. He's the author of Truth Overruled, The Future of Marriage and Religious Freedom. He is the William E. Simon Senior Research Fellow there for American Principles and Public Policy at the Heritage Foundation, which is a great organization. And we got a lot to talk about in the short amount of time. Hi, Ryan. Good to see you, friend.
Hi, thanks for having me. Happy to be with you.
You bet. Listen, in your book, you deal with the fact that this was a violation. I'm talking about the Supreme Court ruling now of overturning marriage. It's a violation of the Constitution. We all know that. It was just nothing more than a social decision. It wasn't a lawful. It wasn't a lawful decision. Can we overturn it based upon that?
You know, it was legislating from the bench. It was judicial activism. It was just like Roe v. Wade 42 years ago. There's nothing in the Constitution that requires a redefinition of marriage. Justice Kennedy and 4 other Supreme Court justices just imposed their philosophy of marriage on the entire nation. So we have to do what the pro-life movement did. The pro-life movement has never accepted Roe v. Wade as the last word about abortion. They said Roe v. Wade tells a lie about the Constitution. It tells a lie about unborn children. We have to say the same thing about this Obergefell ruling. It tells a lie about the Constitution. It tells a lie about marriage, and it's not the last word.
Those who are pushing this, part of the argument that will continue to develop is that sexual orientation is a right and deserves protection as much as a race. How do we divide that one out?
Sure. I mean, this is chapter 6 of the book. I have an entire chapter that just addresses that because we hear this over and over again. Here's the problem with that analogy. Marriage law has to be colorblind, but it can't be gender blind. It has to be colorblind because marriage is about uniting a man and a woman as husband and wife to then be mother and father to any children that their union produces. That has nothing to do with skin color. That has nothing to do with ethnic heritage, nothing to do with racial heritage. That's why every great thinker throughout human history said race has nothing to do with marriage, but gender complementarity, male and female, goes to the heart of what marriage is. Why? Because a man and a woman can unite in marriage regardless of their skin color, and children need a mother and a father regardless of their race. This is why we have to push back on that analogy, because we're hearing activists say, if you're against same-sex marriage, you're just like the racists who were against interracial marriage, and we want the government to treat you in the same way.
Wow. Okay, so Pandora's box been opened. Where is this going to lead for religious freedom? I mean, now we got polygamy coming at us. We got 501(c) stuff, 501(c) legal stuff coming at us. What do you think this is going to do in the future for religious freedom?
Well, we know that the activists on the left want those things to happen. They want to coerce the baker, the florist, the photographer. They want to take away the nonprofit tax status from Orthodox Jews, Roman Catholics, evangelical Christians, Latter-day Saints, any of those institutions, charities, and schools. They want to see them forced to either recognize same-sex marriage or lose their accreditation, their licensing, their tax status. We have to insist that none of that ever happens. We have to say that government should never penalize or discriminate against any individual or institution because they believe marriage is the union of a man and a woman. We have to protect freedom for everyone.
Let me say to our viewers and listeners, you can grab the book at Amazon, Barnes & Noble. It's called Truth Overturned, The Future of Marriage and Religious Freedom by Ryan Anderson. There's a picture up there on the screen. Let me encourage you to get it. It's a real resource. Ryan, back to the court just for a moment. Those who had a dissent opinion about changing the definition of marriage, and then followed up by, we had 2 Supreme Court justices who actually were involved in officiating same-sex marriages. Can't this thing be challenged just on its constitutionality and the conflict of the court?
Well, the problem is right now is that if you were to challenge it, it would be the same justices hearing the challenge. there would still be a 5-4 split. What we saw is that Justice Kennedy and the 4 liberal justices voted simply to impose their personal philosophy of marriage on the entire country. The 4 conservative justices, each and every one of them, wrote a blistering dissent. There are 4 wonderful dissents written in this case, explaining where Kennedy and the majority had just gone off the rails, that it had no basis in the Constitution, it had no basis in our nation's laws, histories, the logic, or the text of these laws and the Constitution. What we need to do is see that elections have consequences. The 2 Supreme Court justices that President Obama appointed to the court, they voted to redefine marriage. The 2 Supreme Court justices that President Bush appointed to the court, they voted to uphold marriage. We're going to have to see what happens with the next president and the next Supreme Court justices. There will probably be a case that will determine religious liberty. What happens to Catholic charity adoption agencies? What happens to the baker, the florist, the photographer? And that's why we have work to do. You know, I wrote this book to be a user's guide, kind of a roadmap, a user's manual, a playbook for what we, the people, need to do in response to a bad Supreme Court ruling.
All right, so we the people, do we have the power of Supreme Court justice impeachment?
Well, I mean, I don't know if that'll go anywhere, though. I mean, I think we have to think practically of what can we actually accomplish. And I think one thing that we can do is something called the First Amendment Defense Act. This is a bill that's been introduced in the Senate by Mike Lee and in the House by Representative Labrador. It has over 100 co-sponsors in the House, 30-some senators co-sponsoring it there. And this says that the federal government can never discriminate or penalize anyone because they view marriage as the union of a man and a woman. Passing that into law would be very important for protecting our freedom to live in accordance with the truth.
Could that sustain a presidential veto right now with that kind of co-sponsorship?
Well, we don't know. We'll have to see if President Obama would veto it or not. We can also see what happens with the next president. You know, it would be important to see support for the bill now could influence the nomination process and the election of 2016, and then an inauguration will be January 2017. That's only a year and a half away. And it's important that we do the policy right, you know, regardless of the politics, that we say this is what policy ought to be. It ought to protect American citizens from government coercion.
Wow. All right, so here we go, and I guess we're just in for some long battle plans here. Where do you think the faith community is going to end up with this, Ryan, in light of anything that is spoken from the pulpit or taught in a Christian school as being considered hate speech?
Well, we're going to see. We already know that there were some pastors in Houston that had their sermons subpoenaed. They claimed it was because they were talking about political things from the pulpit, not because of their views on marriage, even though it was a political thing dealing with religious liberty for viewpoints on marriage. So, you know, the lines were blurred there. We need to insist that no one, whether it's a church, whether it's a school, whether it's a charity, or whether it's a business, is ever penalized by the government because they believe marriage is the union of a man and a woman. We know activists on the left want to do that. We've already seen people say Christian schools should lose their accreditation or they should lose their nonprofit status. We've already seen the baker, the florist, the photographer that have been fined thousands of dollars from the government. We need to combat that, and the way to combat that is with good public policy that says the government can't do these things.
With net neutrality, Ryan, and the government taking the internet over and turning it into a utility, sooner or later is going to result in content control. And all of us who have a faith-based internet site could be cited for hate speech just by what's on our website.
Well, I don't know enough about net neutrality, but this just highlights that the concerns aren't just for the free exercise of religion, it's also the freedom of speech. It's the freedom of association. All of our First Amendment freedoms come together. There's like an ecosystem of freedom, and anytime any of them is chipped away at, they all are at risk. And that's why we have to protect freedom in its most robust sense for everyone.
There at the Heritage Center, you guys really track, and by the way, thank you for all that you do. You guys are just absolutely terrific. Where do you think, just as a little side note, only got about a minute left, with all the stuff now with Planned Parenthood, where do you think that's going?
Well, hopefully it'll lead to the federal government saying no taxpayer money should go to Planned Parenthood, because Planned Parenthood uses most of its actual medical procedures in killing children. And so we shouldn't be subsidizing them with our tax dollars. You know, I point out in the second chapter of the book that there's a connection between redefining marriage and risks to unborn human life. Because if you redefine marriage, you redefine parenting. And if you redefine parenting, you put more children at risk. Because we need to have a strong marriage culture together to protect against unplanned pregnancy in the first place.
Wow. By the way, do you know what the percentage is between Planned Parenthood's medical procedures that would relate to women's health versus abortion and killing babies and dismantling them?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I've seen it reported that it's somewhere in the 90%, that 90% of the services are abortion related, but I haven't been able to look into that for myself to verify it.
That's pretty interesting. All right, the book is called Truth Overturned, the Future...
Overruled. Truth Overruled.
I'm sorry. Truth Overruled. Thank you for correcting me. Truth Overruled, The Future of Marriage and Religious Freedom by Ryan Anderson. There's a picture there on the screen. Like he said, it's a manual. It's kind of like marching orders. Thanks, Ryan. Keep up the good work. We'll connect again soon, okay?
Thank you. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too. All right, we'll see you next time on Focus Today.